when you speak from where you are, when you look at it, religion versus spirituality, is that actually meaningful difference at all? Or because people seem to have conflict regarding, younger people seem to believe in spirituality but not religion, but religious people say they are one and the same.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends. Again, this is a matter of perspective. So I do think there is, I can see it from both perspectives. So religion in the common popular mind is associated with dogmatism, with a certain rigidity, with rules and regulations, with very, very kind of black and white thinking, us and them thinking, and blind faith, not inquiry, and all kinds of things like that. That isn't necessarily what religion has to be, but I think that's what many people associate religion with. When they say I'm not religious, that's what they mean, I think.
Yeah.
So if that's how religion is conceived, and I do have to say there's obviously some truth to that picture in many instances, that is different from the spiritual, which is not focused on those things, but is focused on a pursuit of absolute truth. So religion is that more founded on laws that you have to obey, or else it's more about obtaining I feel like in Indian Hinduism, at least anyway, probably in other cultures, it's about obtaining what you want. You live this way, you'll get the rewards. You live that way, you will get punished, right? Versus the spiritual is beyond reward and punishment, but is seeking something which is not in that arena at all. That said, I think that the right way to think about religion is that it is part of the ladder of spirituality. That's ideally how it is, that they are part of a continuum, and that religion provides a series of spiritual tools that are accessible at varying levels to people of varying mindsets. The more rarefied levels of the so-called spiritual may not speak to many people, but that doesn't mean that there is no element of spirituality that could. Often the element of spirituality that could speak to such people is buried in what we might call religion. So, for example, I do think that many people are not going to get anything because they're not prepared for it emotionally, intellectually, in any way whatsoever, to read and understand the Upanishads, get anything out of it. It'll just be like complete gibberish, right? But will they understand going to a temple and just being in those vibrations for a little bit and feeling something?
Right.
Yes, right? Clearly, yes. And so temples, rituals, rules and regulations that bring communities together. Religions have other functions too. They have all kinds of sociological functions of binding communities together and celebrating certain losses, and not losses, but celebrating certain events and giving closure to certain losses and all those kinds of things, which I'm not an expert in. But I do think from a spiritual perspective, right? Many things that are considered religious, like having certain disciplines, right? Observing certain holidays, and maybe in those holidays you take a break from your usual routine and try to enter a holy space of some kind, right? Where you're not thinking about the usual things. You are thinking about at least somewhat higher things than you're normally accustomed to, right? Those can start planting the spiritual seeds, can start giving you some taste of a kind of peace that is not dependent on your usual modes of consumption, So, and that will then lead you, perhaps pique your interest in doing something more. And so maybe you graduate from just visiting a temple to doing more pujas, and then maybe eventually you go to chanting a mantra, and then perhaps more breath control, and then you say, oh, let me read some of this stuff. You start maybe or start attending satsangs, and then you start reading about it and thinking about it, and then you want more and more and more, right? And you go to karma yoga, and then this is a sort of ladder which you could progress upon, and it might take many years, it might take many lifetimes potentially. But I would see that as the true connection of religion and spirituality. But religion often is hijacked, for political ends. It's hijacked for people who just want power. Lots of negative personalities inhabit positions of power in the religious sphere. It can be used to control people. It can be used to abuse people. It has been used in those ways. So I don't want to neglect the fact that religion has a lot of downsides in those senses. I can understand when people say they don't want to be associated with religion. I get that, where that impulse is coming from, but I do see a deeper resonance for sure.
So you spoke quite a bit from the Hindu perspective, like or at least Indic perspective,
Yeah.
But how about Judeo-Christian traditions or Islamic tradition or Chinese? How do you relate to them?
So I mean, I'm not an expert in any of them, I'll say immediately. But I am a believer in, which is I know out of fashion with scholars of comparative religion today, but what Aldous Huxley called a perennial philosophy. And so his idea in his book, which is a beautiful book, and I highly recommend it. Yeah, is that every religion has two faces: a face for the masses and a face for the few. And its face for the masses includes what we know conventionally call religion, as rules, regulations, etc. And that's where there's the most difference from religion to religion, right? The outer doctrine. But then there's the face for the few, which is the spiritual side. And Huxley makes the case that in every religion, this face for the few is essentially saying the same thing, more or less. And I agree with that. And so I think that when you come to that side of the religion, they are all pointing towards a direct experience of the divine that can be obtained through a movement inward. And, I'm not an expert on all the different techniques, and how they call them exactly, but I know that, for example, every religion has such people, right? You find it, among the Christian contemplatives. You have people like Meister Eckhart, and among Christians. Among Judaism, you have the Kabbalah, and that often deals with these topics. Among Muslims, you have the Sufis, right? So and then not to mention the Taoists, and you have various other groups who are who also have concepts of direct experience of a truth beyond words. That's what it really comes to.
So, how do you identify